Well, now, that's what I would call one really long gospel reading. But it turns out it didn't have to be a long gospel reading. You know, every Catholic church in the world, not just this country, but in the world, and every priest in every Catholic church in the world has the option this weekend of going with one of two gospel selections. Now, every priest has the option to go with the short form of today's gospel reading, the 15th chapter of Luke, verses 1 to 10, or to go with the long form of that same chapter, the 15th chapter of Luke, verses 1 to 32. And I opted to go with the long form. Not to see how long I can do this, but because I really believe that the message Jesus is trying to teach us tonight is located not in the short, but rather in the long form. What Jesus Christ is trying to tell us tonight, how important it is to listen when someone speaks. If you want to understand what someone wants from you as they are speaking, you have to listen. So let's take a look at verse 1a of the 15th chapter of Luke to see what it says. It starts off by saying tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but ... We're going to get to that but moment in a second. But there it is, the tax collectors and sinners. Two groups of people you thought could care less. They were giving Jesus the respect he deserved by deciding to listen to him. And when you listen to someone speak, you're going to understand what it is that they're saying. When a husband listens to his wife, the wife listens to her husband, they'll be able to understand and act accordingly. But that doesn't happen all the time. And so now we're going to pick up with the rest of verse 1. Let's take a look at the rest of it. Now we're going to start from the beginning. This is going to be verse 1a and verse 1b of the 15th chapter of Luke. So there's that first part we just went over. Tax collectors and sinners are all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and the scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." The scribes and the Pharisees, they could not hear Jesus. They weren't listening to Jesus because they were doing what? They were complaining. And if someone's talking to you and you're busy complaining, you're never going to hear a word they're saying. It's like if you're talking to someone, a family member or a friend, and their cell phone is in their hand and they're texting someone. Now, you might get aggravated and they might say, well, I can do both. I hear everything you're saying, honey. But the wife is saying, there's no way. Because my perception is this: I do not have your undivided attention. You see, when you don't have someone's undivided attention and you're talking to them and they're looking away, they're on their cell phone, they're doing something else, that just is a great way to get someone aggravated. That is very aggravating. What Jesus is saying, the scribes and the Pharisees, they were complaining. They weren't listening to what he had to say. And here's what Jesus does. I find this amazing. He does something very unique in the very beginning of verse 2, the 15th chapter of Luke. Let's take a look. Now we're going to do verse 1 and 2 because this thing builds up to a crescendo moment. So we're going to start back from the beginning. You've heard this now twice. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. They were kind enough to give him respect, to listen to what he had to say. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." They weren't listening to what Jesus Christ had to say. And this is how Jesus Christ counters this problem. Verse 2a, the very last line and a half. So to them, that's the scribes and the Pharisees, Jesus addressed this parable. And for the next 30 verses, Jesus has a rant going on. What Jesus Christ is saying is this: you guys aren't going to listen to me. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk and talk and talk and talk until I wear you down. And you're going to put away the cell phones. You're going to put away looking outside. You're going to stop to listen to what I have to say. How important it is, out of a sign of respect, to listen when someone speaks to you. You know, it reminds me of this fella. He was really concerned about his wife. He felt that her hearing was really, really bad. So he went to the doctor. He said, "Doctor, I don't think my wife, she can't hear anything I say. What should I do?" Well, the doctor said, "You want to go home and run a test on your wife." "What do you mean by that, doctor?" Well, the doctor said to the man, you want to go home, stand about 50 feet from your wife, ask her a question. If she doesn't respond, move up a little closer, go about 40 feet from your wife, ask the exact same question. If she doesn't respond, get a little closer to about 30 feet, ask the same question. She doesn't respond, move into 20 feet, 10 feet, and then stand right up against her. And then come back and tell me at what point your wife finally responded. And then we'll develop a plan of action to address the hearing loss of your wife. Sounds like a really good idea, doctor. So the man went home. The wife's in the kitchen. He stands about 50 feet from his wife and he said, honey, what's for supper? No answer. So he moves in a little closer to about 40 feet. He said, honey, what's for supper? Still no answer. So he gets a little closer at about 30 feet. He said, honey, what's for supper? No answer. Then he moves into 20 feet and 10 feet. Then he stands right up against his wife and he said, honey, what's for supper? And she looked at him and said, look, for the 5th time, chicken. You see, he was positive that she wasn't listening to him. And that's the way most of us work. We're positive the other person doesn't hear a word we say. But in fact, he wasn't listening to her. Well, that's the message of the gospel reading. If you want to show respect to someone, to your wife or to your spouse or to your son or daughter, to your mother or father, when that person in your family or that person that's a part of your circle of friends, when they are talking, you should stop, look at them, and listen. And then you'll be able to hear what they say and understand what they're asking and respond accordingly. That's what Jesus is saying. Jesus clearly loved, describes the tax collectors and the sinners, despite the fact they were sinners and they were doing things that Jesus didn't like. They were tax collectors that most people did not like, but they were the ones who were willing to listen to what Jesus had to say. The Pharisees and scribes, they were both educated people, but for some reason they were too muddy or thought too much of themselves to take time to listen to what Jesus had to say, and that just aggravated. You know, a lot of fights occur in homes because they didn't listen to the other one speak. A lot of animosity occurs between sons and daughters and the parents because when someone was speaking, the sons and daughters to the mother and father, or mother and father to the sons and daughters, there wasn't any listening going on. No one took the time to hear what that person had to say. And when you don't hear what they have to say, then that means you don't understand what they wanted, and you can never respond accordingly. What a powerful message. It's a simple little message, but I think it's one that you recognize and you know the benefit of when it directly affects you. What Jesus is saying is this: when someone is speaking to you, stop, look at them, and listen. Why? Because when you are speaking to that person, what do you want that person to do? To stop, look at you, and listen.